Steph. I'm the Director of HR Consulting for Zelle. I worked for Union Bank for 10 years and then have done dual job roles as the HR Director for, as the Consulting Director for Zelle and the Talent Management Director for Union Bank. So one of the topics we talk about a lot, and I talk about emotional intelligence quite a bit in leadership series and different strategic planning sessions and lots of different things, because it's applicable in all of those different areas. And for you guys today, we're going to talk about how it's applicable to you in your life in general, and then how you can apply it at work. Okay? How many of you before today have even heard of this topic? Oh, right. You guys are probably learning something new. The way, my style of doing things, if you have a question, interrupt me. If you have a comment, interrupt me. This is not a lecture by any means. We do have a lot of material to get through, but please stop me if you have a question or a comment as we go through this. I also have given each of you a packet, okay, and you all have a pen. I'll point you in the direction of what you need to be filling out as we go through, okay? All right, so our topic today is emotional intelligence. Everyone in here has an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what that is. So today, this is our overview. We're going to talk about emotions, and if you feel like by the end of today that you've been in a counseling session or that you've sat with a therapist for an hour, it's been a good session. Okay? You are probably going to feel that way. I'm going to pop this door because it is really warm here. See, I get, especially when I'm speaking. Okay, we're going to talk about emotional hijacking. We'll talk about EQ, or emotional intelligence, and what that means. We'll talk about EQ versus IQ, so emotional intelligence versus cognitive intelligence, and what's the difference between the two, right? We'll talk about the EQ competencies. There are 4 of them. We'll talk about why you should work on them in a specific order, what they look like. I will give you strategies on how to improve your EQ. There's a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and some of you might have read that, might not have read that. Some of the training material comes from that book. It's a really, really great book, comes with an assessment, and I think it's fabulous. And then lastly, we're going to talk about your core competencies at eye care specialties, and talk about how emotional intelligence can be incorporated into that. Okay, so we'll really wrap it all into one. So an emotion. You have the definition. It's the first thing that you're going to fill in the blank on. It's a conscious mental reaction, as anger or fear, subjectively experienced as a strong feeling, usually directed towards a specific object, sometimes person, and typically accompanied by physiological and behavior changes in the body. The big thing that I want you to note with this, physiological and behavior changes. The first step of emotional intelligence is understanding yourself, your emotions, and how your body reacts to those emotions, right? How does your body react when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're happy? And what does that feel like? Having acknowledgement in the moment, this is how I'm feeling, okay? Some people just do a self-check. For me, I have been working on emotional intelligence for probably the past 5 years, because you can improve your emotional intelligence, okay? So as you're going through this today, if you feel like, oh my gosh, Steph, I'm horrible at this, or B, I have some improvement to do, it can get better, okay? That's the cool thing. But for me, what I do is I use a scale of 1 to 10. How am I feeling right now? Well, right after we left the gym this morning, I snapped a picture of the sunset, or sunrise, and a picture of my workout, and I posted to Facebook and Instagram. So I'm like, yeah, it's a great day. The sunset's beautiful. I've worked out already today. Sarah kicked my butt, right? But I'm feeling great. So how did I feel in that moment, right? And on a scale, how joyful was I? I was probably about an 8, right? When you're looking at anger, anger's a really good one because we can always identify when we're angry, right? So tell me, what do your bodies do when you're angry? What is your reaction to anger? Just shout it out.
Go into a shell.
Heart rate, what?
Go into a shell.
Go into a shell, get a little more like reclusive, okay?
Sweaty.
Sweaty. changes. What else?
Maybe feel hot.
You might feel like the room is 78 degrees. Right? Yeah, your heart rate quickens. You might get blotchy, right? There are a lot of people, if they speak in front of other people, if they get nervous, they get blotchy. Some people, when they get angry, you can just see the anger like rising up on their chest because it just gets redder and redder and redder, right? Some people cry. So what's really important about this, everyone has a different reaction to emotions, right? In the first part of emotional intelligence, we really focus on ourselves because that is essential. You have to know yourself before you can focus on other people. Okay, good morning. No, you're fine. Hey, I'm flexible. That's not a big deal. Yeah. Okay. So, this diagram outlines the 8 basic emotions, and you have to list all of these. So, the first one is fear. Then you have surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, anticipation, joy, and trust. I'm out of the viewfinder.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
I'm moving with you.
Okay. Have any of you seen the movie Inside Out?
Yeah.
So cute. Oh, it is
That's
so
exactly
cute.
what this sounds like. It's a cartoon.
The characters in Inside Out are your 8 basic emotions. So for those of you who haven't seen Inside Out, okay, is it a Pixar movie? Yeah, it's a Pixar movie. And it's about the little emotions inside this little girl's head. And as she grows up and working through her emotions and the different like life's challenges that you have as a young adult. Okay? The whole premise of the movie is that Joy, who is like the really happy-go-lucky, everything's great, nothing can ever be bad in the world, right? She tries to push sadness out of the group. Like literally tries to kick her out. And then she realizes sadness is really important, right? It's an important emotion to have. It's an important emotion to acknowledge, right? There's also a little guy that's angry and disgust. So all of them are little characters in the movie. But the moral of the story is you have to have all these emotions, and you can't push them away. Right? It is such a cute movie. If you have not seen it, watch it. I'm sure it's on Netflix or something. It's on Redbox. Oh, it's a Redbox right now? The other thing I will point out to you, some of you might feel like, well, Steph, you're telling me that I have 8 basic emotions. I have a lot more than that. I have way more than 8. Okay? When you look at the scale here, like anger is just a good example because we all recognize when we're angry, or when we look back and we go, wow, I was really angry in that moment. Okay? So you have annoyance here to the left, and then as it gets more intense, you have rage. So you have those feelings or those emotions you can experience on a scale. So when you boil it all down, you have 8 basic emotions. Okay. All right. Let's talk about emotional hijacking. This is really, really important to understand what this is. I'm not going to have you raise your hand and say, yeah, I've had one of these moments. Let's talk about it, because we've all had this moment more than one time. Okay. The way that your anatomy works is you have in your brain a piece called the amygdala. The amygdala is this big. It's the size of a walnut. Okay? That is your emotional center. This big. Some of you feel like, whoa, mine is much bigger than that, right? And some of you are like, wow, I have one of those? I didn't know that I had one of those, right? I don't really feel like I have a whole lot of emotion. Before your thought process makes it to your frontal lobe where you make logical decisions, okay, it goes to the amygdala. So, when you're emotionally hijacked, this is an out-of-control emotion that makes you say something that you don't need to say or do something that you don't need to do. It's that moment when you have a situation, usually you can use anger as an example, you have a situation, you react, and then you look back going, ooh, I probably shouldn't have done that. Or, I kind of regret saying that, right? We've all had that moment, okay? Your process, your cognitive process in your brain, you are stuck in that amygdala. You haven't moved through to the frontal lobe where you're making those logical decisions. So I'm going to give you some strategies today to help you through your emotional hijacking moments. What I will tell you is that as you work on your emotional intelligence, your hijacking moments will not go away, right? I told you I've been actively working on this for 5 years. That's a long time. I still have emotional hijacking moments. Are they fewer and far in between? Yes. Can I recognize when I'm about to have one? Absolutely, and if I can stop it from happening, I do. Okay, so we'll talk more about that as we go through, but it's important for you to know what emotional hijacking is and where you're at in your brain when that actually happens, because you can't avoid it. That process of going through the amygdala, there's no detour. You have to go through that to get to the frontal lobe in your brain. Okay? And understanding that is the first part to handling these better. Okay? And one more thing I want to add here, when you talk about emotional hijacking, and I said I love emotional intelligence because it's relatable in every aspect of your life. You look at any relationship that you have, whether it's at work, at home, with your family, with your friends, with your grandparents, whatever it might be, you know, you have to know what this is because you experience this. You have customers that come in all the time. I'm one of them. Several of you in here have helped me. I told the last group, I think eye care specialties is one of my longest relationships. I've been coming to you guys since 5th grade, right? I've known Dr. Hinckley for a long time. So it's important to understand what this is. All right, here's your definition of emotional intelligence. That's your next section down here. You're going to fill in the blanks. It's your ability to recognize and understand your emotions and the emotions of those around you, and your ability to use this awareness to manage your behavior and relationships with other people. Okay. And like I said earlier, we're going to go through the 4 competencies of EQ, of emotional intelligence, and break that down a little bit more. All right, this is the fun part. How many of you have heard of book smarts versus street smarts? Raise your hand. Yeah. Okay. IQ is your cognitive intelligence, okay? It is your book smarts. Does your IQ, you can cheat with the screen, does your IQ change over time? Or is it fixed at birth? Fixed at birth? Yes, it is fixed at birth. Yep. And some of you are like, really, Steph? That doesn't make sense because when I was born, I don't know all of the things that I know now, right? I didn't know how to ride a bike or drive a car. I mean, you think about those basic functions that we do every single day. When you think of IQ, I want you to think of it as the capacity for your brain to hold knowledge. It's your capacity for your brain to hold knowledge. So it's the maximum amount of information that your brain can hold. You cannot put more in it than what it can hold. Okay, so that's how it's fixed at birth, and you learn new things over time. Okay. Your EQ.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Well, then how is it that we only use 10% of our brain?
That's a very good question. I know. Wasn't there a movie about that with I know. Wouldn't it be amazing if we even used 20% versus 10%? Yep. Your EQ is your street smarts. It's your ability to use emotions and skills to connect with other people, reading a room, understanding if someone is having a good day or a bad day, those types of things. It's your meaningful relationships with other people and managing those relationships appropriately. If you have a customer come in and they are having a bad day, right? How do you approach that situation? How do you know that they're having a bad day? How do you know they're having a great day? Well, I told you this morning I'm having a great day. Right? It's a flexible skill. You can learn to have better emotional intelligence. It can improve over time. But I will tell you, it is not easy. You have to actively work on it every single day. I've been in a class for the last 2 days, which was very hard for me because I am not someone that sits still. Look at how much I'm pacing across from Sarah's having to like adjust the camera as I'm working all over the place. I've been sitting in an office for 2 days, listening to an emotional intelligence seminar and getting certified in a new assessment, which is really cool, right? But the whole idea with emotional intelligence is to constantly work on it. One of the things one of our classmates said is that they set an alarm every day to actively think about their emotional intelligence. That works for them, right? I encourage you to do that and more. Use it on a regular basis. Think about it when you get to work in the morning. Think about it when you wake up. And if you do that, you will actively be improving your emotional intelligence. And you're like, well, how am I going to do that stuff? I'm going to give you strategies. So you can actually commit to some things today and say, yeah, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Okay. I love this quote. Daniel Goleman is, I call him the founding father of emotional intelligence. He's really, he published a book back in the 80s and has really, it became a springboard for emotional intelligence in the workplace. Okay, there was a lot of research done before he published this book in the 80s, but he's amazing. So this quote, an individual's success in work is 80% dependent on EQ, while only 20% dependent on IQ. Now, this is true in a lot of situations, okay? Like for you guys, right? You have to be smart to know how to do your job, but you work with people. When I walk into your office, you have to be able to connect with me, right? And have that relationship, even if you've never met me before, okay? But there are also situations like, if I needed to have brain surgery, do I really care if that person is emotionally intelligent? Bedside manner. No, I do not care. I want that person's IQ to be like the highest IQ possible so that they can do surgery on me and fix whatever needs to be fixed. Okay, if they have a high EQ, that's a plus, right? I have a friend that I went to high school with, just moved back to Lincoln, and is a pediatrician. She's doing the Lincoln Pediatric Group. Okay, for her, she has a high EQ and a high IQ. She'll be very successful because when you're looking for a pediatrician for your kids, do they need to have good bedside manner? Yeah, absolutely. You're not going to go back if you can't relate to them and connect to them as a person. Okay? So I love this quote because it really helps explain it's applicable in most situations, but in some there's a little bit of an exception. Okay. All right, go and flip to the next page. Let's talk about the competencies of emotional intelligence. Now what I want you to do, in the self-awareness box, put a number 1. Self-management, number 2. Social awareness, 3. And relationship management, 4th. Why do you think I had to do that?
Probably the order that's important.
The order that's important. Yeah, absolutely. I said it earlier, you have to focus on yourself first before you can focus on other people, right? Literally, these personal competencies up here, this is you talking to yourself. No words are coming out of your mouth. It's all in here. Okay? This is a whole nother level. It becomes a lot more complicated because you're involving other people. Right? And what I said earlier is that everyone reacts differently to emotions. So you need to have an ability to be aware of what those behaviors are for people around you, to try and understand or have an acknowledgement of what those emotions are and what they're experiencing. That's hard. And the longer you've known somebody, it gets easier, right? But once you meet somebody, if you're first meeting somebody or first working at Hyper Specialties, you have new people coming on, it's kind of hard. It's like I'm feeling you out. Like, how do you react to these things? What's going on? That's all part of social awareness. Okay? So we're going to dive into each of these competencies, and I'm going to give you some strategies. And as we talk about the strategies, we won't talk about all of them because we only have, an hour today. But I want you to write down 3. I'll talk about the ones that I think, as I've done this training for a lot of people, what people point out on the slide, then you can write some of those things down. Okay, I want you to really try and come up with some things you can actually commit to, right? I can actively do this. Okay, and if you only write down 2, that's okay. But I made space for 3. All right, your first competency, self-awareness. This is your ability to accurately perceive your own emotions and motives across various situations. I don't have this anywhere for you to fill in the blank. If you want to write it down, you can write it next to that self-awareness, and then you have the 3 spaces underneath that. So essentially, self-awareness is your ability to go, okay, how am I feeling right now? So for me, I use that scale of 1 to 10. I'm an 8 right now. I'm a 2, whatever that might be. One of the most important, I don't want to say assets, but one of the most important pieces of self-awareness is understanding that emotions are emotions. They're not good, they're not bad. They just are what they are. We have to accept that and move through the emotion. Because there are emotions we don't want to feel. I mean, there's not a lot of people that like feeling sad, right? Or like feeling angry. We all want to get up and have a great day, right? Or at least have a good day, right? So what's important is not to, and some people think as we talk about this, that self-awareness and self-management is keeping those emotions in and not sharing them with other people. That's not the purpose of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is understanding, this is how I feel right now. How am I going to actively manage that emotion? Because you don't want to fake it. I mean, you don't want to be sad and act like you're super happy. Because that's not being real and true to yourself either. So the whole idea with this is acknowledging, here's where I'm at. And then the next piece is, how am I going to manage that? Okay. All right. We already kind of talked a little bit about this, but self-awareness helps you understand what you do well, what pushes your buttons. I'm sure you can all at least think of one person or thing that drives you crazy, what satisfies you, and then what motivates you, okay, in your life. Here are the strategies. There's just a few that I'm going to point out, and again, this is from that book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's a really great book. It actually comes with an assessment. So if you want to take it, you absolutely can. They have it at Barnes & Noble, I think, for $15. We already talked about this first one a little bit, this quick treating your feelings as good or bad. So we talked about that. The next one that I want to point out to you is observing the ripple effect from your emotions. A lot of people don't think about this, but how are my emotions affecting other people? So if I'm not aware of how bad of a day I'm having, am I ruining other people's day when I walk in the door and I'm not nice to them? Right? It's kind of like dropping a drop of water into a bucket. Where are the ripples going? Right? You guys all know if a customer walks in your door, a patient walks in your door, they're having a bad day, and they are not self-aware, everybody knows that they're having a bad day. Right? And you're going, oh, I don't want to help this person. Or you have those regulars that you're like, not it. I am not adjusting those glasses again, right, for George. It's not happening. Okay? So what are those emotions? And when you see other people have those negative ripple effects, you're like, man, I hope I don't do that. But are you actually aware if you do that or not? Right? So having that awareness. When you look at this too, what's the positive ripple effect that you're having? When I walked in the room this morning, I was saying hi to people. I was telling you how great my day has been so far, that we worked out this morning. If I would have come in and not said anything to any of you, you would have been like, ooh, please. Right? So it's all about perception. And what are the ripple effects? Okay. Talked a little bit about leaning into your discomfort. Naturally, as people, we tend to not do this. Right? We all have emotions that we are uncomfortable with. We have to address them and work through them. Because if you don't, and you keep them in, what happens?
Builds up and then comes out when you don't want it to.
Yes. And then you're emotionally hijacked. Right? We're trying to avoid that. Okay? I think this one's really important. Visit your values. If I asked you right now, what are your values as a person? Would you know what they are? Would you be able to tell me, Steph, their family, faith, right? Being fit, having a good work ethic, positivity? What are those values for you? And if you're like, I don't really know what those are, write them down. Take 10 minutes today and actively think about, what are my values as a person? And then how am I actually aligning with those values? Because if I look at my own personal values and I'm in a situation, I become emotionally hijacked, I'm not following my values at all, right? I'm saying something I don't mean, I am not being positive, right? So do that, check yourself, set that reminder, see how you're doing. After today, you're gonna, like Sarah said, you're gonna think, wow, that was really good, we could spend a lot more time talking about this. And honestly, we could talk about emotional intelligence the rest of the day, right? We won't do that, but we could. But set that reminder in 3 weeks. Pull this back out. How am I doing? Okay. Seek feedback. That is scary, right? Oh my gosh, what if they don't like me? Well, I got news for you. Feedback is not always 100% positive, and we always think it should be, right? Because why wouldn't it be? If you don't seek feedback, you don't know where you're starting. So you don't know how well you're going to do. It's like working out. There's all of these, take the measurements, do get on the scale. You're like, I don't want to get on the scale, I don't want to see that number, right? Take the before picture before you start boot camp. And a lot of us are like, no way, I want to see what I look like at the end. I don't want to take that picture now. And I sure don't want anybody else to see it, right? If you don't know where you're starting, you have no clue how much success you've had. So you have to do that. Seek the feedback before you start doing this. Okay. So those are the self-awareness strategies that most of the time people point out when we talk about. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. So hopefully as I talk through that, you've written down 2 or 3 that you feel are applicable to you that you can actively commit to. Okay. Self-management is the next step. This is your self-control. How are you able to actively manage your emotions and behaviors? So step 1 is, I've identified this is how I feel right now. And then step 2 is, how am I going to manage that productively? That does not mean stuffing it down and not addressing it. So if I'm upset, that doesn't mean ignoring being angry and acting like I'm happy with that person. It means addressing it in an appropriate way. Okay? And managing that. Self-management strategies are going to help you be a little more flexible, direct your behavior in a positive way. You can handle uncertainty a little bit better. And then the second one, resisting your emotional hijacking moments. Because when you think about it, when you're faced with a situation, you always have that gut reaction. It doesn't matter if you're a really social, not detailed, big picture person, or if you're an extremely analytical, detail-oriented individual. You always have that boom, this is how I feel about it. And then you divide those 2 groups in half. The analytical people spend a little more time thinking about it, right? And they usually calm down and kind of get to a place where they're like, all right, what logically makes sense? The other group might not get there. Okay. So allowing yourself to get to that point where you're able to make that logical decision and not reacting off of your feeling and your gut. That can be involved in it. I'm not saying don't do that, because I make a lot of decisions based off my gut, and they usually work out pretty well. But I want to have the time to be able to think about it first. Right? At least spend a little bit doing that. A little bit of time doing that. So here are your strategies. Remember I told you about the anatomy of your brain and that you have the amygdala and everything goes through that before it makes it to your frontal lobe? Okay? There are 3 strategies on here that really help that process to move through it. Okay? So breathing right, counting to 10, and sleeping on it. We've all heard that count to 10, right? It gives you the time to make it from the amygdala to the frontal lobe. Literally. It gives you the time to make it through that process that you can't avoid. There's no detour around the amygdala. Give yourself the time to work through it. Okay, breathing right, same concept. It gives you some time. You get oxygen up into your brain to help that process happen. Sleeping on it, if something is really, really important, you probably want to sleep on it before you do anything, right? Give it a day. Have some time to logically do your pros and cons and make that decision. Okay? I use these management strategies in parenting. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, Taylor. Taylor's very emotional, and she's a very, I could say she has a very soft heart, right? Her feelings get hurt easily. She's a big helper, and she can get upset really quickly. What 2-year-old doesn't get upset really quickly, right? But if she needs to calm down, I'll say, okay, take a deep breath, and she'll, she's doing like the crying where she can't breathe. I do that, count to 10, just take some time, calm down, right? You're emotionally hijacked right now. Take a moment, okay? So that's really important. Let's see, another one that a lot of people ask me about, cleaning up your sleep hygiene. They're like, what the heck do you mean by that, right? The book actually says cleaning up your sleep hygiene means not doing anything to activate your brain right before you go to sleep. So don't be on your phone on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Don't be watching Jaclyn Hill videos on YouTube. I do that all the time. I need to start practicing this better, I think. Don't stay up late watching Netflix, right? I was watching Sons of Anarchy. It's just so hard with Netflix because that new window pops up and it's like 15 seconds. Wow, and then you're like, oh, it's only 11:30. I can watch another one. No big deal. Okay? So cleaning up your sleep hygiene is not doing those things. Okay? For me, that's not 100% realistic because that's part of my wind down time, right? So you need to have a process to cognitively shut your brain off. So you need to identify what that means for you, okay? And how that works because sleep is essential for our life. Can we survive without sleep? No. If any of you have ever tried to stay awake for a long period of time, like cramming for a test in college and not sleeping the night before and then being home the next day and then being up maybe the next morning and you're like, oh my gosh, you literally shut down. Your body will fall asleep. You will pass out. Okay? So preparing for sleep is very, very important. This one is huge, and most of us as people, we don't do this. This strategy, speaking to someone who's not emotionally invested in your problem, we tend to validate ourselves with other people, right? So if I'm having a problem with my sister, okay, who do I go to? I go to my friend who also has problems with her sister, right? And I vent to her about it, and then she validates the way that I feel. That's probably not the most productive way to do that, right? Because if I want to improve my emotional intelligence and improve that relationship, I need to talk to somebody who's not emotionally invested, who can't relate. Kind of like a gut check. You're the third party. Am I handling this the appropriate way or not? Okay. Putting a mental recharge in your schedule. Now, I'm going to preface this with, I am not telling you get an extra break in your day, okay? But what I am telling you is at some point in the day, each of you hits a wall, right? And some of you, when I say that, you're like, oh, I know exactly when that is. It's at 2:30 in the afternoon. I hit a wall, and I get tired, and I feel like I can't move through my day. I can't finish the rest of the day. Some people have two. Some people have one at like 10 o'clock in the morning and then again at 2 o'clock. Some people can go all day and not have it until 5 o'clock at night. And on their drive home, that's when they're mentally recharging. What I will tell you, you have to honor the recharge. If you don't, you will be more tired. You have a higher probability of becoming emotionally hijacked. Be a little more stressed out because you're working through some of the things that you have to do in your job that are detailed things, right? It's harder to do those things. So take the break. And you have to take, and not like a 15-minute break. I'm saying like 2 to 3 minutes of getting up out of your chair. If you've been sitting for a long time, get up out of your chair and go do something, right? Go get something to drink. Go grab some water. Take a lap around the building. Whatever that means for you. When I have time to do this, the last couple of days I haven't had a lot of time to do this, I'll do yoga in my office. I do a couple flows, but I'm done. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to work again, right? I'm giving my brain that time to recharge. It's really important to do that. Okay? Okay. Those are your self-management strategies. Hopefully, again, you've all written down at least 2 or 3 that you feel you can actually commit to, okay, after today. Make sure I don't want to bring out any other ones. Oh, this one's really important. Make your goals public. If you don't tell people about it, it's kind of like dieting. I don't like that term, dieting. It should be a lifestyle change, not a diet. I'm going to do this for a month. Well, that's not realistic, right? Because you're probably going to go back to the same habits you had before after that month is up. Okay? But if you want to make a lifestyle change, I'm going to eat healthier. Here's what I'm going to do. Tell people about it. Same thing goes with emotional intelligence. Here are my strategies. I'm going to actively work on this. Now, you need to share it with people that you feel comfortable sharing it with. So it might be people in the room, right? Hey, let's work on this together. What are you going to work on? What am I going to work on? This is going to be fun. I'll tell you, this actually is pretty fun when you get into it and you're working with someone that you feel like, okay, I've been working on these things. I have knowledge about emotional intelligence. I'm actively working on these things. And then you work with someone, you have a patient come in, and you're like, whoa, they just have no clue. You know? It's really interesting when you get into that. So actively working on it, telling people your strategies and what you want to do, and what your goals are, really important. All right. So now we're done with the personal competencies, right? So I said earlier, self-awareness and self-management, or that self-control, is literally you talking to yourself in your brain. Now we're adding a whole nother layer to that. We're bringing other people into that mix. Okay, so social awareness. This is your ability to accurately understand the emotions and concerns of other people. This is hard, right? Because everybody's different. When I asked you all to name the things that happen to your body when you experience anger, everybody said something different. You might have had some commonalities like, yeah, Steph, I sweat when I get angry, or I clam up, or whatever that might be for you, but everybody's still a little bit different. So this is a little more difficult. So what's important about this, it helps you understand other people's feelings and perspectives, their development and support needs, social climates, and group dynamics. And what I mean by that is, how many of you have ever walked into a room and you're like, whoa, we can cut the tension with a knife in here. You can feel it? That is social awareness. What's that?
And every Monday.
Every Monday. Hopefully not. Okay. All right. Empathy is really, really important. Okay. And I will tell you, at EQ Specialties, you guys do a really great job of this. I have had a great experience with EQ Specialties for forever. That's why I keep coming back. Okay. At several locations. I think I bought glasses at Pine Lake, and then I think you helped me at O Street. Oh, like 6 months ago, I bought a new.
Yeah, I remember that.
I bought sunglasses from you, and then at the show it was on a Saturday afternoon. The frame show. Yeah. So I think that's what's really important is you have so many locations, right? You have to have consistency. So if someone comes into O Street, they need to have a similar experience as they do at Pine Lake, and as they do in Fremont, and as they do, all over. You guys do a really great job of that. Okay? So empathy, and I have up here, and this is what's interesting, it is understanding others' emotions, needs, and concerns. Now, I have it up there, but I don't believe that. Right? That is the definition of empathy. Okay? Understanding other people's emotions, needs, and concerns. But can you truly understand how I feel? No. Right? You can acknowledge how I feel. So make sure you write that down. Empathy is an acknowledgement of other people's emotions, needs, and concerns. A lot of emotional hijacking moments come from situations where you're trying to understand someone else's feelings, and they feel like, well, you just can't do that. There is no way you can understand how I feel. So there's a wall up, right? There's a disconnect. Acknowledging their emotions, needs, and concerns breaks down that wall. And all of a sudden, you're on the same playing field. It's pretty amazing when you look at it like that and when you address your situations like that, right? If you have a patient that's upset and you say, well, I understand how you feel, you might get, how could you understand how I feel, right? So understanding and acknowledging it versus trying to put yourself in their shoes all the time is really important. It provides you that organizational awareness. What are the things that are not written in someone's job description? What are the personalities you're working with? Whose buy-in do you need to get before the meeting to make sure that they vote on whatever you're presenting at the meeting? Okay? Using that strategy is really important. And then service. I think of service in a lot of different aspects. For you guys, it's service to your patients. From the time they walk into the door, from the time they leave. So when we're talking about this, I want you to primarily think of that. But I also want you to think of service to each other, right? How am I best serving my teammates? How am I best serving people at another location? And then the third layer to that is, how am I serving people in my life outside of work? What am I providing to them, right? I have a friend that I've known since I was 2. We've known each other for 29 years. That's a long time, right? And when I first started working on this, I thought, service, okay. Well, how am I best serving her? Right? Obviously it works because we've been friends for a long time. But why do I do the things I do in that relationship? Why do I communicate with her a certain way? Right? For you guys in your service to each other. Why do I say hi to this person when they walk in and not to this person? Right? Or why do I say hi to everybody and why do some people not say hi to everybody? Or whatever that case may be, okay, at work. It's really important to understand that. And how am I serving other people on those 3 different levels? So here are your social awareness strategies. Okay? Now the first one that stands out that everybody's like, oh, you don't take notes at meetings up here, and you're having us write stuff down. Yes, I am. In the book, they say don't take notes at meetings at all. And the reason why is because you're writing like this, and sometimes people who are note takers, they write a lot of notes. And when you're doing this, you're missing out on everything going on around you, right? You miss out on those nonverbals of other people. But I'm someone, I have to write things down. If I don't write things down, it doesn't happen, right? So if you're someone like that, make your notes short. I'm not having you write down the full definition of what an emotion is. I'm having you fill in the blanks, right? So you're engaged, you're writing that down, and then you're back up looking at around you, looking at me, involved in the conversation. Okay. Practice the art of listening. This is really important, and it plays into a strategy that we'll talk about with relationship management, but practicing the art of listening is essential. Most of you in here, in fact, probably all of you have thought about what else you have going on today in the last 40 minutes, right? Well, I thought about that. It's just who we are as people. We're constantly thinking about the next thing, right? It's almost to the weekend. I am actually going to be on vacation all next week, so I've been thinking about that, right? But what's really important is practicing the art of listening, actively listening to people who are communicating with you, whether that's a patient, a coworker, okay, right, or other people in your life. I love this one, understanding the rules of the culture game. This one's really important. How many of you have heard of the golden rule? The universal golden rule. What is it? Yeah, treat others the way you want to be treated. Which is very thoughtful and very nice of you, right? But do you think everybody else wants to be treated like you want to be treated? No. It's a good first step, right? But we should all practice the platinum rule. Has anybody heard that? Treat others as they want to be treated, right? So with Sarah, how do I communicate with Sarah? What does she prefer? How often do we meet? How do I communicate with her outside of work? Does she prefer me to call her or text her? Right? What am I doing to best serve the needs of other people? Okay? In the way that they want to be served, not in the way that I want to be served, because we're all different. Okay? I talk about this concept a lot when it comes to leadership, because when you look at your manager, right, they need to look at everybody that works for them and go, okay, everybody's different. I manage John different than I manage Jane, different than I manage Susan, right? That's how we should lead people. We should not expect everybody to accommodate the way that I manage, because that person will not be as successful as the person who manages everyone individually. Same concept applies in your daily life, right? And for those of you that don't manage other people, if you're thinking, well, Steph, I don't have any direct reports. I don't manage anybody. That doesn't mean you can't lead other people. That doesn't mean that you can't adjust your style to be versatile with your coworkers and your patients that come in, your customers, right? That's really, really important to do. Okay? This next strategy ties in with making time and everything, testing for accuracy and make time and everything. This is a very simple example, but it's something a lot of us can relate to. So with your parents, right? There's usually one that will say yes a lot, and then there's the other one that might not say yes all the time. And you might ask at a specific time in their day that you know they're in a good mood, so you hopefully get the yes, right? Yeah, I used to play that game all the time. Imagine that, right? So my testing for accuracy, I'm checking to see if now's a good time. Right? So this is a silly example, but if I wanted to go to the mall and buy a new pair of shoes, right, and I was going to ask my dad if I could go do that, I would ask him, my testing for accuracy is, hey Dad, how's it going today? I still do this. Not asking for money for shoes, but I still use the test for accuracy question. How's it going today? Oh, it's going great. How are you? Perfect. I'm going to get my shoes today. That's awesome. Right? If he says, well, it's not great, okay, well, I'm not going to ask that question right now because I'm going to get a no. It's asking those questions at a strategic time that works, right? So you get the best possible outcome that you can get. Okay? So those are very important. Okay? It's like when you're selling glasses and you're talking about the lens that the person's going to purchase, right? When do you ask if they want to upgrade the lens? Right? You have to ask at the right time. Because if you start out saying, well, you should do this and this and this and this lens and whatever, and they're like, whoa, I am overwhelmed. I am no basic. I don't know. And most of the time in sales, if you do that and someone's like, no, I don't want that, they don't understand what you're talking about. They're saying no because they don't understand. So making timing everything with that is really, really important. Okay, so I encourage you to look at that. All right, those are your social awareness strategies. The last piece we're going to talk about is relationship management, and then we're going to just go over your competencies, okay? And you're going to make some goals based on what you've written down on this page after that. So relationship management is the fourth piece of emotional intelligence. It is very, very important, equally as important as the rest, okay? It's your ability to inspire, influence, and develop relationships with other people. It's your ability to connect. And have that self-awareness, social awareness, and wrapping it all into one to have a productive relationship with other people. This helps you to do all of these things: influence other people, inspire leadership, develop others, be a change catalyst. This one's really important. Conflict management. Naturally, as people, we don't know. There's some people that like conflict. They're most likely lawyers, right? Right, they fire their mother and not have a problem with it. There are people out there like that, absolutely. And good for them, right? Because that's what you want in someone that does that kind of a job. Building bonds with other people, and providing that teamwork and collaboration. Okay? So here are some strategies. Be open and curious. Taylor is getting to the age that she is asking why for everything. Everything. I mean, and it is awesome. It's awesome. But we slowly, as we grow up and we become adults, we realize it is not socially acceptable to ask why to people. I am encouraging you to be more open and curious about other people. That will help you build those relationships. Okay? This one's really important. Remember the little things that pack a punch. The things that are not very important to us could be very important to someone else. Okay? Sometimes we get into our daily lives and our routine and it's like, oh, that's not a big deal. Right? I've had situations where people come in my office and they're like, yeah, this is the problem I'm having. And I'm like, oh, no problem, we can fix that. It's not even good to respond like that because I just minimized their issue. They brought it up to me. It's a big deal to them because they brought it up. Right? So acknowledging that and then working through and helping that person fix it. Okay? Think about your patients that come in. I mean, when you guys are evaluating people's eyes, right? That might be something you guys do every day, right? But think about your older patients that come in. That is essential for them to be able, well, for everybody, to be able to drive their car. Like if I didn't have you guys, I couldn't drive. That's crazy when you think about it like that. It's a little thing. I mean, you guys see how many patients a day, right? But it's a big deal to me that I have the right prescription in my glasses and the right contacts. Because if I don't have that, I can't perform a function that I do all the time, driving my car safely. Right? We talked about feedback. Oh, I love this one. This is one I have. I'm working on right now. Only get mad on purpose. It's hard. It's really hard. Okay? So it's literally in the moment. Remember I said I do that scale thing. So scale of 1 to 10. All right, I'm a 5. And then the situation continues. Okay, now I'm an 8. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'm deciding, oh yeah, I'm going to get mad at you. And this is exactly what's going to happen. Right? Having an ability to control that versus reacting. Taking the moment to think about it.